operator's missing here. Missing in action, excuse me, sorry. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're just even a little late getting started here, so going to ask you all to come and sit down. It looks like you've already got snacks. That's great. And if we can get our operator at the console over there. I think we're already live streaming, so we should be okay there. Okay, so today's been kind of an exciting day. Actually, yesterday also. As most of you know, our speaker tonight was supposed to be Mr. Brian Mariani from Alpha Omega Institute. And yesterday, Brian's little boy, 1-year-old, came down with RSV and had to be taken to the hospital. And so Brian has 4 other children, and he needed to be with them. So tonight we have with us Dave and Mary Jo Nutting, who actually founded the Alpha and Omega Institute. And they're going to be with us tonight instead of Brian, and we're very happy to have them here. We came close to a cancellation this morning just because I was worried about the weather in the mountains. That came in from Grand Junction and had to drive through the mountains, but coming over was fine. We just hope they'll be able to get home okay. So it's been kind of an exciting day and a lot of stuff happening. Let me show you our agenda for the evening. Get used to it being over here. It's the usual one. We'll do an opening prayer, and I've asked Pastor Thompson to do that. Dave is going to be speaking tonight, and I will do a short introduction for him. And then we'll have Dave speak. After he speaks, we'll have a few announcements, and then we'll close with the Lord's Prayer and the hymn, I Sing the Mighty Power of God. Sound okay? All right. So let me just tell you a little bit about Dave and Mary Jo. They're the founders, as I said, and directors of Alpha Omega Institute. They both taught both at the high school level and at the college level, math and science. And that personal contact with students convinced them of the importance of creation and of teaching it. And so in 1984, they founded Alpha Omega. And they've spoken extensively. They give presentations in churches, universities, camps, and they tour both in the United States and internationally. So tonight, Dave will be speaking on think of the title, he's going to talk to us about Costa Rica. So while it's snowing outside, it's going to be warm in here. Right? Okay. Okay. All right, so Dave, if you want to come up, we'll get this HDMI transferred to your computer. Oh, okay, Mary Jo's going to help out too, great. And we need you to get your mic on here. Okay, here you go. Oh, I'm sorry. Can we pause for a moment? I'd like Pastor Thompson to do a prayer. Thank you. Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Okay, I'll turn it over to you guys.
All righty. Well, we're glad to be here. We didn't know when we started out whether we were going to run into a lot of snow or not, but it was actually blue sky coming across Vale Pass and coming down into the Denver area. So we were very blessed to have that good weather.
That was a major answer to prayer.
Yep. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on how we came into this whole issue of creation and evolution. I grew up in a Christian home. I was taught the Bible. I believed it. I believed in Jesus as my Savior. I believed in creation. But at the same time, I was going to school. And in public school, I learned evolution. And I didn't know what to do with these two things. And so what I did, I'm going to see if I can pin this on. Yeah, maybe. There we go. I didn't know how I would put these two together. So in high school, what I did was just draw a big line right down the middle. And on one side, I put creation and the Bible and church. And on the other side, I put evolution, what I thought was science and school. And they just never met. Well, my first year of college, I went to a church college, actually a Lutheran college, and back in Minnesota. And they taught me that Genesis was a myth that was written for primitive people who couldn't understand the science of evolution. They said those days were really periods of time, millions of years long, and that order in Genesis 1 was roughly parallel to the idea of evolution. And they said God must have used evolution as his method of creating. Now, I went over to the department into the science department there, and they taught evolution just the same as they would in any secular university. Used the same textbooks, same information. And in fact, that Lutheran school, unfortunately, had Darwin Days that they celebrated. That left me pretty confused. But what it did was I thought, okay, God used evolution as his method of creating. That seemed to take the Bible and what I thought was science and put them together. And for me, it kind of worked for a time. And I think what it did was to keep me from totally junking my faith and becoming an atheist, like so many students do at that point. And so I went from that church school to a public university, ended up coming to Colorado State University, graduated there with a degree in biology. Met Dave there. He was working on a master's in mathematics. And so we finished off our education there. And we got out of school. I was ready to go teach biology. What could I teach? All I knew was evolution. So when the book taught evolution, I taught evolution too, because I didn't know any better. I didn't have any background. Well, Dave and I started really growing in the Lord. He was a new Christian at that point in time. He had grown up in a non-Christian home. And instead of going to church on Sundays, they were out on the desert looking for dinosaur bones and petrified wood fossils and other things. And so he was really into geology and paleontology. He was still, relatively a moral person. He still had this faith somewhere that there was a God, but he certainly didn't have a biblical background, didn't know God personally at that point. And so we got married and we started studying Scripture together. We started reading the Bible. Just, we didn't know what else to do. We thought, let's just read the Bible. Let's find out what it says. But we never got back to the book of Genesis. We started in the New Testament. We studied a lot of things. And that was fine. And we went to New Mexico. We taught public high school and junior high down there. Dave was in math and I was in the sciences. And that was great. And then we had the opportunity to go to Alaska and teach at a small little church college in Alaska. And guess what? That church college didn't care that we taught evolution either. Everybody up there on staff was evolutionists, or worse than that. We actually even had a Eskimo on staff who was a shaman and was telling these students they should leave white man's religion and come back to the shamanism and all, on staff at a Christian school, supposedly. And so we started growing, though, up there in Alaska. And God was discipling us. He was taking us through his word. And, God likes to mess with you once in a while, right? I was shopping at a little secondhand store one day, and I found this little book that said, Evolution, the Fossils Say No. I went, what? That book was for 5 cents. I bought the little book for 5 cents. And Dave says, good thing it wasn't a dime. We were on such a tight budget, I probably wouldn't have bought it. But I brought that book, and I brought it home. I looked at it. I thought the fossils were the best proof of evolution. And here Dr. Gish was saying, no, they didn't prove evolution. In fact, they were a problem for evolution. I gave it to Dave with his better background in paleontology, and his conclusion was this guy's either nuts or we better start doing a little more study. Well, at that point in time, we began to study what the scientific evidence said, not from what we've been taught in school, but going and looking at the research and reading everything we could that these crazy creationists were publishing. And back then, we could read everything that came out, it seemed like. Now we can't do that, obviously. But back then, we just devoured everything we could to learn more about creation. And over a period of time, you might say we evolved from evolutionists to creationists. It didn't take millions of years either. But it did take us a little longer to come to grips with the age of the earth and the reality of the flood. I remember one time in Alaska where the pastor of the church we were going to, he said to us, don't you just see evidence of the flood all over western Colorado? Well, we were polite. We didn't laugh at him in his face, but we went home. We laughed. We thought that was so funny because we had been so well indoctrinated to look at rock layers and think millions and millions of years. And it requires a paradigm shift to get out of that kind of thinking, really. Well, guess what? The next time we went back to western Colorado, you know what we found? Everywhere we looked, we saw evidence of flood geology. Layers, rock layers laid down by moving water, and then massive amounts of erosion. And so at that point in time, we came to grips with the age of the earth issue also. Now, I know a lot of people can do it simply by reading the Bible, and that's probably higher level of way to come there, but that's not the way God took us. He took us through the sciences to come back to the Bible, and then we went back and we looked at the Bible again and we went, how in the world did we ever think that the Bible could teach evolution or have room for millions of years? It's not there. It's just plain not there. And so this whole idea of theistic evolution that I accepted for a long time, that idea is poor theology, but it's also poor science, both ways. And so we ended up, we had a student up in Alaska. His name was Jeff. Jeff was a great young man, and Dave and he liked to go out hunting, fishing. They talked about all kinds of things. But whenever Dave got close to anything spiritual, Jeff would just close up. And finally one day Jeff says, Dave, I can't buy this Jesus stuff. And Dave said, why not, Jeff? He said, because evolution is a fact. That means Genesis is false. He says, if God can't get the first book of the Bible right, why would I believe anything else he had to say? That's pretty good logic, right? If somebody's lying on the first page of the book, how are you going to believe the rest of it? And so at that point, Jeff was an atheist, claiming to be an atheist. Now, he had grown up in a Christian home also, which was really sad to us to see that he had rejected his faith, and it was because of evolution. And people will say to you, well, evolution's not a salvation matter. Why don't we just stick to the gospel? Who needs this creation stuff? Well, it's not a salvation issue as far as you're not going to have to take a multiple choice test. Do you believe in evolution? Do you believe in creation? Give me all the evidences. It's not a salvation issue that way. Our salvation depends on what Jesus did for us on the cross. However, when this whole issue keeps people from coming to the gospel and keeps people from coming to Jesus, then it can become a salvation issue for them. Well, we had at that point in time, we had Dr. Henry Morris come up to our little college up there in Alaska, and he gave a series of lectures. Jeff came to those lectures, and at the end of the time he says, wow, if evolution isn't true, that doesn't leave much, does it? He said, I better start doing some thinking. And within just a few months, he became a believer in Jesus. Why? Because now he had a foundation, right? Now he could believe what God said in the beginning, and he could read that Genesis account. He could read about the creation and the fall and the flood and the need for a Savior that we see coming from that whole account given in Genesis 1 through 11. It was at that point that God really started working on our hearts to go into a creation ministry. You can't really do a creation ministry very easily, not a traveling creation ministry off an island in Alaska. And so we came back to Colorado, which was Dave's hometown, and ended up eventually going out to the Institute for Creation Research when it was still in San Diego, went through their graduate school program, which was powerful. What a blessing to be able to be there and to work with Dr. Gish and Morris and Parker and Austin and all those guys, you know. What a tremendous blessing for us that it was. And we ended up graduating from ICR. Dave was doing a master's degree in geology. I did a master's degree in biology with an emphasis in science education. And we wanted to start a creation ministry at that point. And I think if ICR would have put us on staff, we probably would have joined them. But they didn't do that at that point. So we ended up coming back to Colorado, went back to Dave's hometown, Grand Junction. And we said, this is a great spot, all this geology around here to look at, all the dinosaur fossils and everything else that we have. And so we ended up starting the Alpha Omega Institute in 1984. It was just at that time our two boys, Tim and Steve, and they were like 4 and 6 at the time, or 5 and 7, something like that. We started out traveling around the country in a little orange pumpkin Volkswagen van with a pop-top camper, and we would drive our friends crazy and all. You know, anybody, can we please come? Can we do a talk in your church? And that's how the Alpha Omega Institute started out. At that point, we had no idea where it would go from there. We just wanted to be able to teach creation. We didn't have any plans to build an organization or plans to go anywhere out of the States, really. But over the years, God has brought people to us that are very faithful, very committed to God and to the creation message. And the Lord's opened up opportunities all around the United States and really around the world. AOI's been in 31 countries now around the world, and the furthest being Mongolia, which that's an interesting story how we got there. We won't share it tonight, but you know, it's so amazing to me to see the way that God works. We didn't even have an inkling that we would be going overseas. And the Lord opened up so many opportunities. And so we are so grateful, and we're glad to be here with you tonight. We started going down to Costa Rica about 17 years ago. And we ended up being able to teach at churches and universities and so on down there. We work with a missionary couple down there. They line us up in all kinds of places. And we got, you know, every time we would go down, we would put in a little bit of touring around to see things. And we got to thinking other people would enjoy seeing these things. And maybe we could do some tours, some creation tours of Costa Rica. And so we ended up starting to do creation tours of Costa Rica, looking at evidences in design, in the plants and the animals, and looking at the geology and the way that it impacts the plants and animals and so on. And so tonight what we want to do is to show you some of the things that we've learned in Costa Rica, and we want to invite you to think about coming with us to Costa Rica next March for a creation tour of Costa Rica. So Dave's going to get started then, right?
I think so.
You think so?
Okay.
I'm going to pass around this clipboard. This is for our newsletter, and we also have some literature here. If you want to sign up for the newsletter, just print your name and address clearly on there, and we'll be happy to give you that. And then you can pass those around too. Oh, Mike. Thank you. Does Dave need it? I'm just wandering away with it. There you go.
Yeah, we are. Get into a busy place, and I frequently don't need a mic. He'll hear me back in Grand Junction, okay? So, here we go. More better. All right. And so, we're going to be looking at the design, and not only design, but Also, we're going to look at the whole idea of creation as it relates to Costa Rica. And for some reason, it doesn't always show up. I'm not sure. It was there a second ago. Escape. All right. From the beginning. Try that again. Don't you love technology? Isn't that great? Especially when you think you have it in there. All right, so let me go ahead and do what now? I did. Yeah, I can try one more time. But let me go ahead and come here. There we go. That looks like it may work. All right. So anyhow, so the next thing is to plug this thing in here. All right. There we go. So, been given these tours for about 6 years to Costa Rica now. 6 different ones. We had to quit during our COVID years. Okay. In fact, we just finished up giving a tour of Costa Rica in 2022. And everybody was so excited. And unfortunately, they didn't want to leave, but we all had to wave goodbye. And Mary Jo and I were scheduled to be still in Costa Rica for another 2 full weeks, speaking at the universities and churches, and schools, all kinds of places. They had us packed solid. So right after the tour left, we were talking with the campus minister, and he said, well, yeah, there's COVID in the country now, but are you okay with that? I said, sure. Yeah, let's we'll do it. And that was at 10 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he calls me again and said, Dave, everything has changed. Everything. He said, the government just shut down the universities, so you can't speak at the universities. All the churches are following suit. You'd better book a ticket really quickly if you want to get out of this country. All right. And so that was on a Wednesday, and Friday we ended up coming home. So anyhow, we're heading back down there actually to do another tour in March 5 to 14. And then we're going to be doing, hopefully, the full 2 weeks of creation ministry as well in another way with the university and churches. So that's what we're ending up doing. When we look at Costa Rica, we see great evidence of the biblical framework for understanding the whole of creation. It's a creation. It's not just that. We look at creation. We see the beautiful design, don't we? We see it. It's all over Costa Rica. But we also see evidence of the fall, the thorns. How would you like to try to climb that tree? Okay? And it's not just cactus. Boy, we get those great big thorns, but those thorns are there also for a reason, too. And we even see evidences of the flood, the destruction, the volcanism down there. And we'll find out that the people groups are pretty smart. And the ancient peoples of Costa Rica had quite a bit of technology. Where did that come from? Well, it all stems from the dispersion after the Tower of Babel. So that's what we're going to look at. Genesis chapter 1 says God created things after their own kind, stated 10 different times, right? How much more clear could that be? And it's we see the distinct kinds not only in the living record, but we also see it in the fossil record, don't we? We see it all the way through. And when we see these distinct kinds, what does that tell us? Evolution is not the agent. Evolution doesn't work there. All right? But when we look at the Bible, we find out in Isaiah, he says, God created it, not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. And we see that. We give tours of Yellowstone National Park, as well as Costa Rica and other places, even the Grand Canyons. and the southwest. But we see so many different ecological niches full of amazing creatures. Even the hot pools where it's right there, it's boiling water, but we have organisms in there. Okay? And you say, whoa, if you go into the black smokers, that's might be 600 degrees Fahrenheit there. Guess what's down there? Living creatures. He fills his world with his creatures, doesn't he? Every place seems to be well inhabited. You know, Costa Rica is only about, I'm going to say, 1/3 the size of Colorado. If you're from, I guess, if you're from Minnesota, it's only 25%. But think about it, 1/3 of the state of Colorado. And yet, Costa Rica is 1/10, the 1% of the Earth's land mass. Not a big country, but has 5% of the world's biodiversity. I mean, it's all packed in there. It's so much fun to see it, too. And so why? Well, why do you think there's a great diversity? First of all, it's a unique location. If you look at it very closely, you see it comes down on a little strip between Central and South America, right? Little strip. Means you have ocean on one side, ocean on the other side. You can stand up on Chirapú, which is the highest point there in Costa Rica, and you'll see both the Atlantic and the ocean from there. All right? So it's quite varied because of that, because you get the different wind currents, etc. And you have the topography all the way from sea level all the way up to over 12,000 feet. That's because of the geologic processes. And the geologic processes are there because of plate tectonics, plate movement. We're going to be talking a little bit about that. But whatever we see with all this unique location, topography, etc., you're going to see a lot of climatic zones in a little narrow area. Okay? You don't have to travel across like going from here up to the middle of Canada. You can see it right there, all the way from the sea right to the Chirapú. Okay, and so we see all kinds of niches there as well. Well, that's that little strip right there. And as you can see, Costa Rica is at that point of that arrow. And so it just seems like if the ocean is too high, it ought to wash right over the top of that country, right? Except for the topography that's there. But also, we also see something else there. We see all kinds of beauty coming because there's so much ocean on the coastlines. Okay? Anybody like beaches? Yeah, I think we all do, right? We enjoy it. I enjoy a beach that has tropical vegetation along with it, okay? A beach, plain old sand gets boring. It gets boring, but not there if we don't see that. And there's Chirapú, almost, but not quite, 13,000 feet high. And so again, it's a diverse country all the way across. And then I said something about plate tectonics. And when you have active movement of plates, it's going to cause some things. One of the biggest things is going to cause volcanoes. All right? I had done a lot of work at ICR with Dr. Stephen A. Austin. You know what his favorite thing would be? Volcanism. So I got to learn a lot of volcanoes, etc. And Mount St. Helens was a living laboratory for Dr. Austin, for sure. And so we enjoyed it. But if you go to Costa Rica, there are 7 active volcanoes. All right? Now, they're not blowing up all kinds of stuff. Sometimes you might get some dusting from volcanic ash, etc. But it's the plate tectonics that causes that. You have these plates crashing in. Something now dives underneath, and now you get the material coming up into those volcanoes. At least in the northern half of the country, you can see that. Arenal, 2006, gave quite a beautiful display, didn't it? That was in 2006. We have Poás volcano, and I enjoy that one too. And that one has changed drastically over the next, say, 10 years from that picture. Okay, changed drastically. It is a changing country. Irasu, the volcano there. You're looking at the crater of a volcano, and there's a water area and a pond in between. Of course, they had a landslide in it, and then that filled. Now, it kind of muddied the water, but it's clearing up again. And so, again, it's very different from one time to another. And all the fertile vegetation you see, partly because of the climate, partly because of the volcanic soils, okay? And volcanic soils is really rich in certain nutrients. And so you see tremendous vegetation, and that allows for the green of the country, and that's what people go away with. Wow, I've never seen such intense green. And also look at all the flowers too. But it's a wonderful place for that. And so we see diversity. We see of the insects and the butterflies. And I see evidence of design. And I think it's a wonderful spot to be able to think about Romans chapter 1. You know, God's invisible attributes, his eternal power, his divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made. Okay? And then it continues, and it says, professing to be wise, they became fools. That's when they don't. Did he move down there? Mm-hmm. I didn't realize Bill did.
Yep, his wife had to be in a home down there.
Okay, all righty. But, by the way, the blue morpho butterfly is not blue. This, the second picture below is the underside of the blue morpho butterfly. It's not blue. In fact, what if I told you that the top side of the blue morpho butterfly is actually more like your clear fingernail? You wouldn't believe me, would you? But that's what it is, all right? And in fact, it's made of the whole scales of the blue morpho wing is made of colorless protein called chitin, okay? And but basically the intense blue color is produced by what is called constructive interference. There are millions of those little tiny scales. And when you look a little closer under great magnification, you see the laminae. It's kind of like the branches of a Christmas tree. You get an idea of a Christmas tree there? Like the branches of the Christmas tree. And basically the light comes in there, but guess what? It's constructive interference. What comes out is only one color. All the other colors are actually canceled. And so there's such an intense bright blue. And basically an airline pilot from up 30,000 feet can see a group of blue morphos on the ground. That's how intense that really is. But those laminae that is there, they have to be perfectly spaced. Those are the basically the branches of the Christmas tree. They have to be perfectly spaced, and they have to have the perfect spacing in between them as well. And not only that, it's got to be within a fraction of wavelength, 1/8, and there's 1.4 million layers of these laminae are meticulously arranged with incredible accuracy on the wings. Now, I quoted that from Bill Browning. I had him write an article for us in our publication called Think and Believe, okay? And of course, our artist Mark Sonmore put the pictures together. And he did it in a program one time that we had him come over to Grand Junction, and he was talking about the amazing properties of light. It was just wonderful. And he brought this example out of this blue morpho. And I heard this thing. I said, I'd love to see a blue morpho. I really want to see a blue morpho. And when we found out we're going to Costa Rica, there are blue morphos down there. And Mary Jo began to pray, oh, God, let Dave see a blue morpho up close. Well, guess what? Oh, that's really neat to be able to see these little blue morpho butterflies. Sometimes they can be as big as a paper plate. That's how big they are. Think about an intense blue of that. Okay? But what a gorgeous thing to see that. Plus all of the other type of butterflies down there. All right, now of mammals there are 250 species, and half of them are bats, by the way, and they have plenty of insects to eat. Okay, and no, you don't have to worry about blood-sucking bats. Okay, you don't have to worry about that. There are 4 different species of monkeys, and usually when we give a tour, by the time we're finished, we get to see all 4. All right, and 2 species of the sloths. I like that guy over there in the basket. And a lot of people think, look at those big claws. We'll talk about that in a minute. But different things you can get to see, even wildcats. All right, wildcats. They even have some house cats too. They're not quite so wild. Okay. There's a sloth, and look at that, hanging upside down from a limb. All right? And so think about those big claws. What are those big claws for? We're always told big guy has a special type in his claw of a locking mechanism that allows him to hang upside down on a limb and lock it in and take a good nap. It's really great. So big claws doesn't necessarily mean eating meat or tearing flesh. There are 900 species of birds, and 600 of them are permanent residents. Okay, and I think you can see the beauty of those birds. We're talking about that a little bit. One of my favorite is the scarlet macaw. All right, and those can live 65 to 80 years. Those are about this big when they're. That's a big bird. That's a lot of beautiful color. And you know why I like them? I can see them. Yes, you get the bird watchers, they're looking at a little tiny bird through a telescope way out there. I like one that I can actually see, and it'd be right there. But that's a scarlet macaw, and we get to see a lot of those when we give tours to Costa Rica. And the fact that they mate for life, and yeah, God loves beauty, doesn't he? He paints his creation. Now, of course, a macaw feasts on a lot of different things. And what happens when he gets parasites? Do you ever think about that? He doesn't have a doctor to call, right? So what's he going to do? He's going to go over and eat some cedar sap, which would be poisonous, especially to the parasites. All right. How did he learn to go grab some cedar saps and chew and digest that? How did he learn to do that without, maybe he listens to God more than I do. Okay? You can listen and hear, go, oh, you need this parasite control, go get some cedar sap. And sure enough, that's what he does. Quetzals are one of my favorites as well. And gorgeous, gorgeous colors in a quetzal. And that's prized by bird watchers when they go down to Costa Rica to be able to see one of those things. Brilliant, brilliant colors of him and long, brilliant tail feathers. So we usually get to see those as well. But why so much beauty? Again, because God is an artist, yes. You know what Darwin said? Beauty, and most evolutionists today at the university would say, beauty is a mating advantage. Okay? The more beautiful birds, the more they were able to attract their mate, the more beautiful they got over the years. Slow and gradually, over millions of years, they developed this beauty. And they'll say the same thing. You might have heard that about peacocks, because we're all familiar with them. Actually, they're not native to Costa Rica. They're not native here in the United States. They actually came out of India, all right, exported because of their beauty. But now, it's always been an idea that the more magnificent male peacocks attracted the mates better. Okay, always been. But then somebody decided some experimentation. And let's actually find out, is that true? And they had 268 observations of peacocks. Found out splendid males did not win the attention of the females. There's the reason. Right there, came out in 2008. So it wasn't the advantage. And I've also heard that the albino peacock mates at the same frequency as the beautiful, splendid ones. Okay? So, never know that. Oh, look at that. Fire-billed arcari. Isn't that a gorgeous bird? We love seeing those things. But now look at the bill. Ah, that's a mating advantage, right? Prettier bill, right? That's what they would say. So that's what one of the type of toucans. The bill, those types of birds, so the toucan is 30 to 50% of size in weight, 5% of the body weight. What does that mean? It's 30 to 50% of the size, but 5%. Means it's quite lightweight. You wouldn't think that, would you? All right, you wouldn't think that. You'd wonder, how's he going to hold that thing up? But again, Darwin claimed it was a mating advantage. Well, that isn't the case. National Geographic News came out in 2009. The brilliantly colored bills of toucans aren't just eye candy. Rather, they play an essential role in helping the bird control their temperature. Yep, blood is actually pumped into that bill at the exact amount and time in order to be a thermal regulation machine. Isn't that something? And you'll see a toucan once in a while with its bill underneath its wing as well, kind of keeping things warm. You wouldn't think it's Costa Rica. Well, it can get chilly in Costa Rica too, right? It does. Another one of the birds that are really fun are the hummingbirds. And a hummingbird will actually flap its wing 50 to 200 times per second. That's pretty fast, isn't it? And when I say up to 200, that's when it wants to put on a burst of speed. Okay? But, wow, think of the friction. Think about what's going on in there. How about in the body and the metabolism in order to do that? How can they do that? You have to have a lot of energy, and why doesn't he burn up with all that? He should. Anyhow, well, the wings that flap 50 to 200 times per second actually turns out to cool his body system. And he also sips 2 times its body weight per day. If says, oh, that girl down there eats like a bird. You mean a hummingbird? You have to ask those questions, right? 2 times its body weight per day. Again, metabolic heat right there. But the flapping of the wings actually does the cooling of it as well. It does. Okay, now he's going after food. That's a lot of nectar he has to suck up, right? Well, he doesn't suck it up. It's not what is going on. The tongue works like a micro pump. All right? Suppose are 2 long, narrow tubes that go side by side like this that unzip partly in contact with nectar, goes back in, retracts, boop, 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 makes a pump. And it's in less than 1/20th of a second per time, boom, boom, for each stroke of the pump. Again, how did that happen? By accidents of evolution. I mean, you have to have the entire thing working, or this poor old hummingbird's not going to live at all. All right. Besides the airflow from the flapping of the wings to keep them cool, the heart beats 500 to 1,200 times per minute. That's quite a heartbeat. Respiration is 250 times per minute, and that helps cool the inside as well. Again, all these features working with that hummingbird. Now, did hummingbirds evolve? Birds in general are said to have evolved from dinosaurs, right? Have you heard that before? That's what the thing they're pushing, dinosaurs with feathers, all the time. Why? Why would they push it? Because kids are so excited about dinosaurs frequently, right? And now, if we get dinosaurs evolving into birds, guess what? We can start teaching them evolution at the ages. And I think that's what's been fueling that particular thing. All right? But I do have a hard time. Think of a T-Rex or any other big old dinosaur evolving into a hummingbird, don't you? It just doesn't seem to fit. What about the fossil record? All right. Where did that tribe of hummingbirds come from? In Costa Rica, there are 7 varieties of the hummingbirds that you would get to see. 7. Here we see 1 variety. All right? But listen to this thing on the bottom quote. Where the whole hovering tribe of hummingbirds came from remains up in the air. I love their humor there. And then they found a fossil hummingbird. The interesting thing, he said the amazing thing about this fossil is that it is essentially a modern hummingbird. My mind is a little blown. I love they're candid here. But true, you don't have the fossil evidence leading up to hummingbirds. You get 100% hummingbirds. What about bats? I know you can't see those bats very well, can you? All right, but there's a couple of bats on the trunk of that tree. So they have good camouflage. Camouflage God put in place too. But the thing is, bats have always been bats. Over 1,000, almost now 1,400 fossil bats have been found, but not one intermediate. Not one showing how bats evolved. They're 100% bats. This quote says, there are no known intermediate stages between bats and insectivores from where they're supposed to come from. All right? And so this plays a big part in saying, I don't think evolution works. All right? Not at all. All right. Now, we also find some places down in Costa Rica the evidence of fall, don't we? Like, I have to say, spiders, to me, is an evidence of the fall. Okay? But behind that spider, on that tree, you see what looks like kind of a yellow-green look. That is a viper. A viper. And rarely do we get to see vipers. I was down there only one time in all the years that I've been going down there doing ministry and going out and seeing things. Only twice on the same trip I got to see vipers. But it has long fangs that fold back. That's very important, isn't it? Otherwise, those fangs are going to get in your way when you open and close your mouth. Infrared imaging capability. They can actually sense heat better than what you can see. So they do a lot of their seeing through the infrared capability. And the infrared capability works like a binocular vision. And so it can hone exactly in on where that temperature is coming from. And it can do 2 1,000ths of a degree difference in temperature. And that's how it's going to go find its prey. Okay? Pretty unique, isn't it? Now, what about those spiders? Sometimes you see a spider maybe that big around. That's a pretty good sized spider. And you think, I don't like spiders. You like spiders? I have gotten an appreciation of spiders over the years, okay? Think about the golden orb spiders that you find even in Costa Rica, okay? Here it is, golden orb. You know what they're using the spider silk for? They're using it to make things. Like that cape's 100% made out of golden orb spider silk. And it's extremely strong, by the way. A spider web silk is 5 times stronger than steel. And it's twice as stretchy as nylon, and it's completely waterproof. And so now what they're going to try to do, and they have been doing now, is making, because it's so light, so strong, they're making bulletproof vests out of it. And they can make a t-shirt now, just a regular t-shirt, and have the fibers in it, so a bullet goes in, is deflected out. And you can actually, it might knock you over, but guess what? You're not going to have any penetration whatsoever by it. So that's one of the newest things on the horizon, our bulletproof vests. But that one strand of spider web is not just one spider web. It's not just one strand. It's a woven strand. Most people know it until they really were able to look at tremendous. And they're finding out when they look at the back side of the spider that that is a weaving factory back there. And it actually twines maybe 5, 6 strands together and weaves it. Now, do weaving factories happen by accident? Nope. And I don't think that one either. So when I look at the back side of the spider, I get a great appreciation of the spider and realize, this thing, when you view under scanning electron microscopy, you find out that defies evolution. Totally defies it. Not going to happen by accident. Of course, you have marine animals too, and we take people down to be able to look at. In our tours, we do some snorkeling off of the Cano Island, which is on people's bucket list. Okay, all right. Whales and dolphins. We get to see sea turtles down there. Sharks, yeah, maybe. But whales, a good spot for the whales. And that particular one, I was surprised that I got that one. Okay, snapping that picture, I just caught it perfectly. But there's tremendous design, very big design on dolphins. And how do you keep warm or keep cool? All right, a dolphin swims into a cold water occasionally, right? And like you, when you go out in a snowy day, maybe tonight, okay, when you're out there, you want to put your coat on, right? All right, so you have a way to keep warm. How does a dolphin keep warm if it's going to swim into the colder water? Well, here's the trick right here. The dolphin goes over to Walmart and buys a coat. No, that's not going to work. No, it puts on a coat of blubber. And that blubber is a very good insulator. In fact, it's too good of an insulator. And so what would happen, because of the good insulator doesn't give off the heat, it would bake within its own particular blubber layer. It'd bake to death. And so that can be a problem. And so what do? Here's what Discover magazine, this is a magazine that's 100% committed to the idea of naturalism. Naturalism says everything in the universe can be and must be explained without God. That's what naturalism does, okay? Only by natural processes. So here's what Discover magazine says, committed to naturalism. By all rights, life in the sea should leave a dolphin baked inside of that blubber, too good of an insulator, crushed and sterile. This graceful mammal avoids such a fate only by slipping through the loopholes in the laws of physiology. Now that sounds really scientific, doesn't it, Ed? Wouldn't you think that is? Scientific, oh yeah. But did they really say anything? No. They coated a major problem with a coat of paint. All right? That's all they did. And never explained a thing, but made it sound scientific. All right? Well, we can talk a lot about the different design of the dolphins, but not tonight. There are 225 species of reptiles and 70 lizards. All right? And people love seeing the iguana on the lower right, don't they? Those are what people love to see right away. But there are sea turtles and land turtles as well. And 5 of the species of the world's 7 sea turtles, by the way. And there are crocodiles and caimans as well. Two varieties. And we take people to see the crocodiles as well. There's a bridge, and we look down. If we get a certain spot, we look down in the water, we see 12, 13, 14 crocodiles right on the edge of the river. I say that's not a good place to go swimming. we frown on that. But from the ridge, I guess if we have an unruly participant in one of our tours, throw them off into the river from the bridge, right? No, we don't do that either. But they congregate there. Then we call one lizard I love seeing is called the Jesus Christ lizard. That's its common name. It runs on water. And it'll actually get right up on its back legs and it'll take off right across the water. And there's certain type of ways they are able to get the way it's cupped to be able to trap those air bubbles so it can run right across. Okay? Now the great big ones of these don't do it so well, all right? And so anyhow, so the crocodiles have a very interesting design, by the way, because it lives partially in the brackish water. What's it do about the salt problem? The salt buildup. Well, it actually secretes the salt out of its eyelids area. Isn't that interesting? That's what it does. Interesting. So when it eliminates the salt, then there's no problem. It's not the only thing that eliminates salt either. There are other things in different plants that eliminate it, like the mangroves that live in the brackish water. That's salt water, okay? That's salty water. But they have small filters in the plant that removes the salt, concentrated in the leaves, and what happens is when it gets all the salt in the leaves, it drops those leaves. New ones go in place of it. Again, a design feature, isn't it? That's another ecological niche that God put something specific into it. I love the mangroves. Okay, we love going up on some of the narrow little channels with the littler boats, okay? And it's fun because you see all kinds of birds. Sometimes you might be able to see a lot of different types of monkeys up in there, other reptiles. So you get to see those. The birds are fun to watch. Some of the birds are rather intriguing. And this is a bird watcher's paradise. I will have to say that. This is a greenback heron. You know, this bird actually goes fishing. It does. And what it'll do is get a hold of maybe a leaf or a pebble, and it'll take a pebble in its beak, drop it in the water. And then as the pebble goes down into the water, it attracts little minnows. It attracts minnows. They're thinking, oh, this is food. And then the heron, choop, gets it. I think it's an amazing, not only amazing design to even know how to use that, how to do it, a bird that goes fishing, but also shows you the fall, doesn't it? You can't have design and say, oh, what a beautiful world, without an explanation of why things are killing each other. Okay? Why is it a dinosaur eat everything else world? Okay? Why? It's because of the fall, isn't it? And so if you just talk design only without the rest of the fall, flood, we don't have a complete model. Right? All of this working together will show us how all of it fits together. How about the bee eaters? How did they learn to eat bees without getting stung? Well, here's what's going on. Here's an instruction for bee-eating birds. Once you have caught a bee, wrap its head against a branch until it stops moving. Next, rub the bee's tail against a branch to remove the stinger and venom sac. swallow whole, or feed to chicks. This is a wasp hornet or other flying insect may be substituted. That was on actually a signpost that I took that picture from. I thought that was great. How did the bee eater learn to do this? You know, that's something we have to consider when we look at these things. Look at the intense green again. But wait a minute. Look at all the holes in that leaf. And not the other ones necessarily, but that one really got attacked, didn't it? But what attacks it are called leaf cutter ants. All right, the leaf cutter ants. And you can actually watch a whole string of these leaf cutter ants all carrying a piece of a leaf that they chewed out of the leaf. They all have a piece. They're going back, and what they're going to do is bring it down into their tunnel. They live underground there. And what they're going to do is allow that to attract fungus. Okay? Fungus now grows on it, but the fungus secretes a rather nice, sweet tasting food for the ants. And so what happens? They're happy, right? They're quite happy. Another symbiotic relationship here. So what you're looking at are these ants are actual farmers. Go to the ant. Oh, sluggard is what the Bible says, and learn. And this is a program all by itself that you can do on the different aspects of ants. But this one I really enjoy. One of the biggest things that they have to watch out for are ant eaters. An ant eater can eat 25,000 ants per day. So that's, okay, so what are you going to do about that? Well, be careful where you put your hill. If you're a termite, it'll eat you too, okay? So you put your termite mounds way up with the trees, and so you know that those thorns, etc., are going to detract any ant eater, right? Yeah, they're not going to go up there. So there's a symbiotic relation between the ant and the tree. And the ants pollinate the flowers on the tree. So, again, symbiotic. But you look at the termites, they actually daub mud all the way from the bottom. They go all the way to the top of a lot of those trees. So some of them build them way up high, their mounds, you might say, of termite mounds, clear up in the tree. And so you might see, something that might look like that up on the side of a tree. See that little bulb right in there? That's a bunch of termites that live there. By the way, there's some termite mounds in Africa. Now, the big mounds like this, you see the meerkats standing on them frequently, okay? It's a great spot. And meerkats use that mound for watching out for enemies, right? But the termite mounds are actually a controlled environment to make a perfect temperature for those termites. And there's an office building up in Minneapolis area right now. It was actually designed after the termite structure. And they're finding out they can heat and cool that particular thing on dimes instead of thousands of dollars. Okay? So we can learn from what God has made for sure. All right, so there's one way up in the tree. What's that? Take a guess.
It's on a gecko foot.
You got it, huh? I get people saying celery. Some people say, ooh, broccoli. But you're right. It is the pad, part of the pad of a foot of a gecko lizard. And they used to think that a gecko could run across a plate glass ceiling because of suctions, right? But that wasn't the case. What it is are such fine fibers, 250 to 300 million fibers per square inch. Okay? That's a lot of little fibers. They're so fine when you look at it like this under a scanning electron microscope, you find out that this fine little fiber makes a molecular bond with the surface that it is touching. It's a molecular bond. How did that gecko lizard figure that one out, I wonder? Unless God put it in there, huh? And you ever see a lizard, actually, a gecko, going across a ceiling? It looks like it's in slow motion, goes this way and this way, like this. Although it looks like, boom, it's running across there, but you put it down in slow motion. What he's doing is breaking those molecular bonds every time he wants to go forward. Okay? It's a directional molecular bond. And so what are they going to do with that? New adhesive. What they're going to try to do is make a Spider-Man glove. You like Spider-Man gloves? Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, it'd be really what? My son's a rock climber. He'd love it. But they're putting 260 million fibers per square inch, directional, etc. Yeah. But this took millions of dollars to develop. And the gecko didn't have $1 million. So that's for sure. So they're hoping to make Spider-Man gloves, like I'm saying. Wouldn't this be great for somebody who's a window washer? Now he's going to wash these windows right at the top of these 10-story, 20-story buildings, right? All you have to do is just climb right on up, directional, right? And then he's washing. Don't get the wrong direction. Down you go. Again, tremendous evidence there. Okay, there are 175 species of amphibians. 85% of them are frogs. Right. You have to love the frogs of Costa Rica. All right, we might have a couple varieties of frogs up here, but they're just absolutely amazing. Like blue jeans frog. Okay, it looks like it's wearing blue jeans, right? Or the red-eyed frog. They're so much fun to take pictures of. They really are. They're beautiful frogs down there. Beautiful, but don't kiss them. Because some of them can be poisonous. And some of them can be poisonous. In Colombia, they used to use the poison from one of the golden frogs, and they used to make the poison to put on the tips of their arrows and darts. Okay? And boy, I paralyzed something very quickly. And it was amazing what they do. But what they had to do, they had to get that frog extremely mad, okay, in order to extract that poison. I don't know how they figured out how to do that, but they put it down in a tube, and they would get a rod, and then they'd be pushing on that poor old frog, okay, like this. Get him so mad, it would start secreting the stuff. Then they'd gather up the poison and use it to tip their arrows, okay? About a paper clip amount of weight of that particular poison from the one that is found in Colombia is enough to kill 100 people. All right? I mean, that's how powerful of a poison it is. And so you think about it, why don't the poison dart frogs poison themselves? How did the first one ever develop this? All right? It turns out that poison actually works on one site on what's called a sodium gate. Okay? Sodium gate is what controls your voluntary and your muscle contractions, etc. And what happens was that is a string of amino acids. And if you get 1 point out of 1,800 of those, in I think location 1546 of 1,800 and some, if that thing is switched off, like they are for the poison dart frog, then they're totally immune to the poison. How about that? So science does provide us some things, doesn't it? Really good. We're not, creationists are never against science, right? Let's use it in the right way. But how did they figure that out to change one tiny little piece of that in order to not poison themselves? And again, God's amazing design there. But what does naturalism say? we can imagine how mutations coupled with natural selection might refine or produce these features. Sounds good, right? Problem is, mutation natural selection doesn't work.
I don't think they ever designed anything if
No, they don't. They don't. But if I go to the university, if I use any evidence of design, whether it be the brain and all of the tremendous computer network system, the DNA, we can imagine. But the words imagine and might are not scientific terms. It's a part of the wishful thinking of naturalism, isn't it? That you can explain everything from natural processes. You may have heard about Dr. John Sanford's work, okay? And his book, Genetic Entropy. I have a couple of copies of that back on the book table over there. He says the primary axiom of evolution is that evolution proceeds by mutation and natural selection. Sounds really good. Prove it. Does it really work? Yeah, maybe there is some minor changes. Mutation and natural selection was actually suggested by a creationist before Charles Darwin. Okay? And so, yeah, maybe, but Dr. John Sanford, one of the top genetic researchers in the country, says this. Now, he has 25 genetic patents under his belt. Okay? He has. He's the co-inventor of the gene gun used to sequence DNA and the protein sequence there. But he said careful analysis on many levels consistently reveals that the primary axiom is absolutely wrong. And here's what he says as a genetic researcher. If mutation selection can prevent the degeneration of the genome, then the primary axiom is wrong. Listen now what he says. It is not just implausible. It's not just unlikely. It is absolutely dead wrong. It is not just a false axiom. It is an unsupported and discredited hypothesis which can be confidently rejected. From years of research in this is what he has had to conclude. So mutation and natural selection is not going to help this whole idea of evolution. I keep also saying evolution is not science because it still clings to something that's proven wrong, right? And we just come up with sugarcoating on things that they can't explain that sound scientific. So I say evolution is a philosophy posing as science. And it is the pillar of naturalistic worldview. We were speaking up in Oregon one time. I mentioned that in a church seminar. Evolution is not science, it's a philosophy. Somebody ran up to Mary Jo after my presentation that morning and said, "Your husband just changed my life." She said, "What?" I said, "What he said." "What did he say?" He said, "Evolution was not science." I have struggled with this whole idea for all my life. He's probably in his mid-50s by that point. And that explains everything now. Loved it. Okay? Loved it. Okay, we look at Genesis 1:1. And 1 to 11, we're looking at creation design. We see the fall and the death. We actually see there's flood and destruction, right? There is. We see that too. It might be a beautiful world. Maybe before the flood there was a lot more vegetation. Maybe that. But we see that beauty of that design, don't we? That has come since the time of the flood. We see that fall. We see the thorns and thistles, and I wouldn't want one of those vipers chewing on me. Okay? But again, what do we see? Evidence of the fall. But in the flood, we even see that in Costa Rica. Look at that fossil layer of those shells there. Fossilized shell. By the way, we have the very same shell living today. Okay? Same ones, no change whatsoever. It doesn't fit the evolutionary model. You know, we have to understand when we look at all the beauty in Costa Rica, this is the destroyed world. Can you imagine what the original creation looked like? This was destroyed by a worldwide flood. And yet, God has brought beauty out of destruction, hasn't he? He's saying, So we see that all the time. Beauty out of great destruction. And that is something to worship him about. Okay? He brought beauty out of destruction in my own life, didn't he? And some, as the rest of you too. And but that is something. I really enjoy being down in Costa Rica and enjoying the people down there and realize they love to worship the same God we do. Okay? So many of them do. Well, at the end of the flood, we see the promise of the rainbow. Not going to send another flood again. And then after the flood, what's going on? Dispersion. These are ancient artifacts in Costa Rica. Look at that intricate pattern that they've made. They also made stone spheres. All right? Look at those big rocks, perfectly round. That girl there we just happened to pick up. She needed a ride, and we had a great time with her. Wonderful young lady, except so new agey. And so she got an earful. She got witness to all the way. But she was worshiping the Creator, the creation instead of the Creator. Okay? She really is. But look at that beautiful stone sphere. Some of them are even bigger. All right? And the size of that, by the way, the guy on the right was the one who was heading up the Twin Cities creation group. He came down and took the tour of Costa Rica with us. And that was one of our guides over there, just to the left of him. Wonderful guy. And creation, loves talking about it. And not only that, he speaks good English. And we make sure we get a guide like that. But one of the things we see, you look at the museum there, what they are depicting of the ancient peoples of Costa Rica. They are using a method of being able to cast silver and gold, a lot of gold objects. They're casting it with what we use today. It's called the lost wax method of casting. They developed it. They knew they have to get it very hot. How to make like a forge to get it so hot. How did supposedly ancient people that are evolved from some kind of a monkey, how did they ever learn this? But we keep in mind that these people took the technology that they already learned prior to the flood and took it to the various places that they dispersed after the Tower of Babel. All right? And they see that. We see all kinds of things. You look at the pre-Noahic people. They were builders, they were metal workers. They were made instruments. They weren't primitive. In fact, this book, brilliant, Made in the Image of God. And then there's also one that Brian Mariani, who was supposed to be here tonight, he helped in the compiling of the book called Secrets and Genius of Ancient Man. Okay, 2 different books. Well, Costa Rica is definitely a place for photographers. That is our tour coordinator, by the way. We always on our tours have that not only the bus driver, and we use a small bus. We have a very small, limited number of people we take, but we use a small bus. You know why? You got a 60-passenger bus, and it takes you an hour every time you stop just to get on and off the bus. Okay, but we get to places that you can't normally get to with some of these other ones. But he is our tour guide right there. And anyhow, he loves photography too. In fact, I think I even brought that camera down for him. Okay, but anyhow, but there's so much beauty. God is an artist. He loves beauty, right? Beauty everywhere you look. Even the crabs. Look at them. Some of the crabs are so gorgeous. And the different things, the beauty. And if you love beaches, you can't beat that. I like looking at the green leaves. Mary Jo, this is one of her favorite things, to see the various green leaf patterns. And even in caterpillars, again, birds and toucans and man's ingenuity to be able to make something to produce electricity. All right? They've been doing it for a long time. The waterfalls, all over Costa Rica, all over. And we get to see quite a number of them. And then you have what's called the walking tree. What's a walking tree? A tree that walks. Well, it doesn't really walk. What it does is put its roots down, and depending on where the nutrients are, maybe the sunlight, the roots go down in a way that it looks like it's moving, but it's actually staying in one place. And then you might have heard, we have a booklet out there called The Hand of God that one of our staff members wrote. Lanny Johnson, he's our director of our kids ministry, our children and family ministry now. Okay? But anyhow, it's called Fibonacci numbers. His book is called Hand of God. And he is seeing these spirals all over creation, whether it's the placement of the leaves on a stem, spiral arm galaxies. He calls it the hand of God. This is God's signature throughout the universe. And we see it even in a banana stem here. They grow bananas all over Costa Rica, well, in various areas of Costa Rica. Again, we see the spiral form as well. We see all kinds of interesting variety of trees, and so much fun. And various monkeys we see as well. One thing I like about Costa Rica, you don't have just this plant. See that tree right there? That's an entire ecosystem. All right? That plant, that tree harbors so many different things because of the rain, and it gets into little crevices there, and now you've got all this other stuff growing there too. And you get the frogs going up into the trees. And then they carry their tadpoles down and put them in the water they're hatched out in the trees sometimes. And so it's just amazing. Gorgeous everywhere you look. And again, my point is, why so much diversity, so much beauty? And that big plant on the bottom is a type of an umbrella plant. It's because God is an artist, and he loves beauty, okay? He loves beauty. We can see it all over, and I hope you appreciate that. That's one of the things I enjoy so much about Costa Rica, is the beauty, whether it be God painting the flowers or painting the plants or the sunsets, okay? He does that too. He paints the sky. And it's just amazing when you actually go down there and see all that stuff. I love it. So that's our Discover Creation. I hope you got some ideas of design from Costa Rica tonight, okay? And so, but remember, you're not going to just discover creation. Worship your Creator. And that's what we love doing on our tours. And so I'm going to give you an invitation. Okay? Come on, join us. March 5 to 14. Okay? Come on down. You really enjoy it. Mary Jo, anything you want to add?
No, there's some brochures back here, papers if you want more information.
Where are the brochures? Oh, you already gave them? Hey, by the way, here, why don't you hold them up? Maybe somebody, if they're at all interested in coming with us on a tour of Costa Rica, raise your hand. We've got a day-by-day itinerary telling you exactly. You don't have it in front of you, but it's exactly what we do every day, what you're going to see, where you're going to stay. Okay? So, very important you do it. We also give Yellowstone tours, too.
What's the cost of that trip to Costa Rica?
What is the cost of the tour? Because of our small group, etc., and everybody that comes with us, a full-time naturalist guide for the entire time, plus their tour coordinator, it's like $2,600.
Does that include your airfare?
No, I wish we could do it, but just from the standpoint of how much we have to pay, and we put you in higher quality motels in a third world country. Some of the places like it is down there, you don't want to live, or you don't want to stay in some of those hotels. You want to stay in the better ones, and so we do that. And yeah, I mean, because we can afford to do that because they don't charge as much. Okay, and so that's about what the Yellowstone tour for 5 days would be, and that includes the bus tour and the lodging, and all the food you can eat basically. Okay, so we have 2 different Yellowstone creation tours as well.
By the way, we also have an app that you can download onto your phone. It's a tour of Yellowstone National Park, and there's one for Colorado National Monument.
Over on just out of Grand Junction.
Yeah, you can get them on either Android or iPhone.
People have been utilizing that app, and they're holy boy, are they impressed. He said this is better than any of the national park apps. Better. And it's more comprehensive, and we give the creation view as well. Okay? And lots of photography. And so anyhow, do you have any questions?
I think we're going to have to hold questions because we're running out of time here. But if you have questions for them, you're welcome to ask us after we close the meeting out.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you. Did I go too long?
No.
Oh, good.
Let's thank.
I think I got it just right
Thank you.
then.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, I'm going to grab this for just a second. I know we're over time. I just have a couple of announcements that I want to make real quick because it's important. They're important, but and then we'll close out the meeting.
Before everybody gets mad at me first.
No. I want to tell you about who we have next month. Next month we have Nate Loper from Canyon Ministries. Nate is the executive director of Canyon Ministries. He's been giving guided trips and tours of the Grand Canyon from a biblical creation perspective for about 25 years. And he spent over 800, the Canyon Ministries has. Nate has spent over about 800 days teaching at the Grand Canyon on various river trips. And he's led tours of national parks and museums. So he'll be with us on December 1st. And then on December 3rd, he's going to be doing a biblical tour of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science from 10 to 3. And it's aimed at students. So if you want to come as an adult, you got to have a student with you. And he's only taking 30 people. So cost for an adult is $15 and $10 for a student. And if you want to sign up, that's the URL, but you can actually just go to Canyon Ministries website and then go to events, and then you'll see the tour of the Denver Museum of Science and Nature, and you can get tickets that way. It is filling up fast. I do have 4 tickets that I'm not going to be able to use, so if anybody's interested in those, you're welcome to see me after the meeting, and we can get you those tickets. But if you're interested in going and you have a student, I think this will be a great one. He's going to do, last time we did the Museum of Science and Nature, we only did the dinosaur area of the museum. That was with Kevin Anderson and the tour of folks from here in Denver. But this time he's going to talk about not only dinosaurs but space and astronomy, animals and biology, dinosaurs, biblical archaeology, and creation apologetics. So he's going to talk about all that during the tour. So if you're interested in that, I think it'll be a great thing to do, and that's on December 3rd, excuse me. And then yeah. Mm-hmm. 4th grade through 12th. Mm-hmm. And then also on December 4th, he's going to speak over at Beautiful Savior for the adult Bible class. I don't know what his topic's going to be over there yet, but it'll be something different than what he talks about on Thursday night. So just wanted to let you know about that too. And I don't have a time for that Bible class, but I'm sure you can find out by contacting Beautiful Savior. So, and then just real quickly, the other creation groups in the area have Dr. Jerry Simmons this month. He's speaking out in Fort Morgan on Thursday, November 10th. But on Wednesday, he's doing a trip, Noah's Flood Tour to the Pawnee Bluffs. So that might be of interest to some of you. And then on Thursday, November 10th, he's at the Berean Bible Church in Fort Morgan. And then also he'll be at the Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship on Friday, November 11th. So you can go to youngearth.org if you want to know more about that. And then on Saturday, he'll be at the Pikes Peak Creation Fellowship. in Colorado Springs. So just a little bit of information for you before we close. And again, I think tonight, since we're over, we'll just go ahead and close with the Lord's Prayer, and probably not do our song tonight, since we only have a few people to sing. So, okay, any questions before we close it out? And then you can talk to Dave and Mary Jo as much as you'd like, or have some more snacks. Okay. Thank you so much for coming, and let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Also, just one other comment. For those of you from Mount Zion, we have a new bulletin board back here that we're putting Denver Society of Creation events on. So, yeah, it's right back in the corner there. So, okay, thank you so much.